Comparto una serie de
I share a series of
reflexiones que vienen de los discursos,
reflections that come from the speeches. In fact, let me do this. Let me just translate in real time, or not translate, but read the translation in real time and just turn him down a little bit. I share a series of reflections that come from the speeches, reflections from three cardinals, all three from Chicago Cardinal Joseph Bernardin, who is Archbishop of Chicago in the 1990s, Cardinal Blaise Cupich, who is currently the Archbishop, and yours truly, as you know, was born in Chicago. So he's referring again here to himself, Bernardin and Cupich. And what he's about to do is he's about to give you the seamless garment view of Bernardin, and he's going to promote and call for it. Now, let's pause here before we proceed any further for people who don't know who Bernardin is, or Cupich, or the seamless garment view. This is a very touchy matter. Okay. For some, Bernardin, who's no longer alive, he was cardinal in over Chicago. For some, they loved him. They loved him, and they say that the accusations made against him aren't true. Others, especially traditionalists, hate Bernardin. And there were some very serious accusations made against him, namely that he was very much promoting homosexuality within the Catholic Church, that he opened the floodgates to homosexual seminarians. And most disturbingly, the biggest accusation made against him, whether there's merit to it or not, is highly debated, were the allegations that came from Malachi Martin in Windswept House. There's a whole lot of controversy on Malachi Martin himself, not only personally, but whether or not he was a reliable source of information. Be that as it may, he wrote about a situation where a bishop in the United States, and he was talking about Cardinal Bernardin. He alleged that Bernardin held a satanic mass in the United States simultaneous with a satanic mass in the Vatican. So there were two satanic masses going on at the same time, and they were connected via phone, and they carried them out simultaneously as a way to kind of consecrate the Vatican and the United States to Satan. And in this satanic black mass, a woman was raped. That woman is still alive today, the alleged woman. She has come out and said that this is all true and made those accusations. There's debate on whether or not she's a reliable source of information. Is she making it up? Or there's huge debates on all of this. Okay. So I'm just telling you, be aware. There's people who say, yes, this happened. Others who say, I don't know. But the lady who was allegedly raped at the time, I know Church Militant reported on it, had an interview with her. You can maybe go and look into that. I know a lot of people have talked about, I know Taylor Marshall and others have talked about the situation with Cupich and this satanic mass and all that. And you can kind of see where they're coming from and what their concerns are in some of those videos, but it's based on Malachi Martin's claim in Windswept House, and some say Malachi Martin was very well placed, so he knew about it. Others question his credibility. Okay, but just be aware, Cardinal Bernardin is like a really touchy subject for a lot of people. So again, some people love him. He was very progressive in his views, and they just swear by him, and they say all this other stuff is false accusations made against him. Others have very serious concerns about these allegations. Okay, be aware. So when he mentions Cardinal Bernardin and he's about to promote his seamless garment view, this is going to be a touchy subject because currently the online Catholic voices who kind of flipped, they went from criticizing Pope Francis to loving Pope Leo XIV. They're the ones who were promoting this view about Bernardin, saying that he held this satanic mass. So this has got to be, they're going to experience some cognitive dissonance watching this. They're going to say, wait, the guy, this, now I love 2 years before was promoting Bernardin. So there's going to be cognitive dissonance for them. Whether they will tell you about that, whether they will talk about it publicly is a different question. I doubt they will. They probably will sweep this under the rug, pun intended, with the Windswept House. They'll sweep this one under the rug, pretend this didn't happen. We're not going to tell people about it. I'm going to show this to y'all because you need to be aware. Okay. So, what is the seamless garment view he's about to tell you about and endorse from Cardinal Bernardine? There's different perspectives on it. Um, maybe let me kind of give you a most favorable understanding of it and then more of a critical understanding of it that you'll see from different people. Seamless garment view is this. You know how there are some in the Catholic Church who speak mostly about the horrors of abortion. And they say, like, this is the worst thing that's going on in the United States. And we need to talk about this more than anything else, more than poverty, more than immigration, more than death penalty. We need to address the issue of abortion. So this group will say, yes, we need to talk about immigration, poverty, death penalty. These are things that we need to address, but front and center needs to be the sin of abortion. Okay, because the idea here is this is a worse sin than anything else going on in the United States. Okay, so you know how that is the view of some in the Catholic Church. Well, there's others in the Catholic Church who are critical of that view, and they want to say, wait, no. They want to say abortion. Okay, yeah, maybe it's wrong, but you need to be talking also just as much about the sin of poverty and inequality and immigration issues and death penalty. You need to speak about these things and condemn some of the issues surrounding them just as much as you do abortion. This is what's called seamless garment theory. It comes from the Gospels that refers to the seamless garment of Jesus. And it points to the idea of something being united. Instead of just focusing on the issue of abortion, you need to be united and whole in your approach and talk about the evils of immigration and, the horrible things that happen to immigrants and how the system is exploiting immigrants and not giving them a chance, or the system is creating or keeping people poor, and is, the horrors of capitalism and stuff like that. That's where that perspective is coming from, right? Or the horrors of the death penalty. And you need to speak about that and be as vocal against that as you are abortion. That's the seamless garment view. You're about to see Pope Leo 2 years before he is made Pope endorse that view. That's going to be, for some people, they're going to love that. They're going to be like, absolutely, especially if they're more progressive leaning, they're going to love that he is promoting the seamless garment view. For others, especially more for your traditionalists, this will be horrifying, and they will be speechless right now if they see it. In reality, most of those people will probably never see this video, because what happens is the circles that they're around are very selective in the material that they provide and share, and they kind of all look to each other. They don't really look beyond that bubble. So unless something comes on their radar within that bubble, they're not going to see it. That's not what I want to do with y'all. I want to be balanced. I want to be fair. I want to show y'all the whole thing. Okay, so let's continue with what he says. Moment said Chicago, Chicaleo. What differences does it make? A single letter. 40 years ago, in December, Cardinal Joseph Bernardine, Archbishop of Chicago, delivered a speech that is truly historic within the church, at least in the United States. He directed it at Fordham University in New York, a speech that set a very important direction for his ministry, offering a new way of thinking about how the church could respond to the ethical challenges and problems that arose at that time, as well as today. They have to do above all with the questions about the value of human life. Last week, Cardinal Blaise Cupich delivered a speech that developed some of the same ideas at Fordham University. Let's pause there. Cupich, he is the Archbishop of Chicago, a cardinal. He is the one who has been over advising Pope Francis on who will be made a bishop in the United States. Prevost was also over advising Pope Francis at the Vatican. So he and Cupich worked in conjunction with one another in determining who would be a bishop and who would be removed. So Prevost and Cupich were partly influential in some of the more recent appointments in the episcopate in the United States. and also in the removal of some bishops like Bishop Strickland. That was Prevost, the future Leo XIV, and Supich, who were, among others, responsible for having Bishop Strickland removed. Whether he was justly removed or not, different question that I've explored many times on this channel already. But I'm just telling you the roles that these guys played. So here he's quoting Supich, the successor, if you will, or a successor, to Bernardine. And Supich is promoting the seamless garment view, and you're about to hear the future Leo XIV just 2 years ago promote it and endorse it himself and call for it. Supich, very controversial figure. Again, the progressives love him. The traditionalists hate him. He has, it seems, been somewhat critical of, for instance, the Latin Mass, and has shut down some of the Latin Masses in Chicago. So if you're kind of a traditionalist, you're not going to like Supich. If you're more of a progressive, you're probably going to like Supich. Right now, he's endorsing the view of Supich on the seamless garment theory. So again, this is going to trigger some people. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and continue with you. And let's proceed. In New York, commemorating the 40th anniversary of Cardinal Bernardine's first speech, Cardinal Bernardine, concerned about how abortion and other social justice issues had even divided some sectors of the church, presented an important response that had its origins within church doctrine, and from this teaching looked outward, looking at society within a framework that he called a coherent ethic of life. Cardinal Bernardine continued to develop this idea until his death in 1996. This vision of Cardinal Bernardine, with which he proposed understanding the moral teaching of the church, sought to respond to the many challenges affecting human life as if they were part of a single garment. There you go. There's the seamless garment theory. He's saying that you can't just focus on the question of abortion as if that's the worst thing. You gotta speak about all these sins in society equally, kind of thing. It charts a path for the church that can serve us today as well. For example, a Catholic cannot declare that he is pro-life just because he holds an anti-abortion stance, but then say that he is in favor of the death penalty. That's going to be a punch in the face to a lot of Catholics right there. Because what Prevost 2 years before being made Pope just told a whole bunch of people is, if you're in favor of the death penalty, but you're against abortion, you're not pro-life. You can't call yourself pro-life. That's going to be a punch in the face to a lot of people. A lot, especially on your more kind of traditionalist end of the spectrum. And that's going to be something that people on the progressive end of the spectrum are just going to love. They're going to be like, yeah, that's what we've been saying all along. So he's saying if you're against the death penalty, but for the death penalty, but against abortion, you can't call yourself pro-life. Now, a lot of people have been critical of that view. And they say, but wait, there is a difference, because with the case of abortion, that's an innocent person's life being taken. In the case of the death penalty, the person is no longer innocent. You cannot compare them as if they are the same. Others say, but no, it is the same, because either way, guilty or not, this is against the infinite dignity of the human person. And that's where Pope Francis comes with Infinitas Dignita, or Dignitas Infinita document, Infinite Dignity, that he just came out with a few years ago. That is where you can find a whole bunch of documents from Pope Francis against the death penalty. He's rooting it in the dignity of the human person. So, yeah, there's a lot going on here. And again, this will be a splash of cold water in the face of those who are loving Pope Leo right now, but are pro-death penalty, and critical of Pope Francis on the death penalty. This is going to be a punch in the gut, because they're going to be like, wait, what are you talking about? You're saying I'm not pro-life? You know, I've been at pro-life rallies. I've been here. I've done this and that. I've done all this. And you're telling me I'm not pro-life? they're going to feel a slap in the face for this, right? So there's going to be different views, different perceptions. People are going to look at this differently. Do be aware of that, however. Let's go ahead and proceed. Share my screen again, and let's continue. This would not be consistent with the social doctrine of the church. So he's saying if you're against the death penalty, you're not consistent with the social doctrine of the church. And then we can say that our way of thinking and teaching must show coherence that defends the value of human life from beginning to end. As a community of believers and as a society, we often find ourselves deeply troubled by divisions, perplexed, and sometimes confused by a host of new questions about life, about the relationship of the church to society at large, and even about the very identity of the individual and his or her relationship to himself or herself. There is division among Christians. There are people, for example, in the church who harshly criticize the Pope or some bishops or some situations, people who reject his teaching, who seek to divide. Just looking at the blogs and interviews in recent months, before, during, and at the conclusion of the month-long Synod on Synodality, there have been false reports, distortions, even theories, conspiracies, and misinterpretations about so many beautiful experiences we had during the Synod. In a certain sense, I propose that today we need Cardinal Bernardine's proposal again. There it is, full stop, right? So if you were unclear of whether he's promoting seamless garment theory of Bernardine, yes, he is, very explicitly. He's saying that seamless garment theory of Cardinal Bernardine that says we have to focus on the question of the horrors of capitalism, immigration, death penalty, X, Y, and Z. You have to focus on that just as much as abortion. Because the idea is that they're all issues that impact life. And so if you're pro-life, you got to be equally pro-life on all of these things. Okay. Cardinal Bernardine's proposal again, and perhaps now more than ever along these lines, now Cardinal Cupich has proposed recovering and then developing these ideas of a coherent ethic of life, moving toward a new comprehensive ethic of solidarity. With this proposal, the church could offer a great gift to the people of God, and indeed to all people who seek the common good, because if the church takes Pope Francis's call to embody a synodal church seriously, then we must instill an integral ethic of solidarity in every dimension of our lives. The coherent ethic of life arose from a perception that a series of moral questions were being raised across the spectrum of life, from conception to the grave, in part by the emergence of new technologies that today also pose serious questions for the church, the family, and all people throughout society. In the words of Cardinal Bernardine, the spectrum of life through the themes of genetics, abortion, capital punishment, modern warfare, and the care of the terminally ill. Cardinal Bernardine rooted these diverse issues in a single principle of the Catholic faith, that the loss of a single human life is a momentous event. Seen in this context, abortion, war, poverty, euthanasia, and capital punishment share a common identity in that they are all based on the denial of the right to life. We could add other issues such as the effects of artificial intelligence, human trafficking, immigrant rights, among many others. Our response to all these challenges requires coherence based on respect for the dignity of human life and authentic reverence for the image of and likeness of God in every human being. If one holds, as we do, that every ugly person's right to be born, I don't know why it says ugly person. I guess that's like some kind of formal equivalency for whatever the Spanish word is there. I suspect that Google or YouTube got that wrong, but that's what it said. Every ugly person born must be protected by civil law, backed by civil consensus. Then our moral, political, and economic responsibilities cannot stop at the moment of birth. We must find the necessary means to ensure that every child born receives the necessary care and that their right to life, health, and education are protected. Those who defend the right to life of the weakest among us must be equally visible in support of the quality of life of the weakest among us. And so this is going to say, if you're out there speaking of the horrors of abortion, you got to speak of the horrors of exploitation of immigrants equally. So including the elderly and children, the hungry, the homeless, and undocumented immigrants. I think that one's going to trigger a lot of people. Let me just sip my coffee. Y'all remember the Kermit the Frog theme? Just sipping his tea. That's me right now. Undocumented immigrants. That's going to set a lot of people off here in the United States. Others are going to love it. Some are saying this man sounds balanced. So yeah, there's different views, different perspectives. You know, some people are going to see this as great. Some people will see this as balanced. Others will see this as unbalanced. Others will see this as horrible. You know, there's different views in the Catholic Church, and based on like different views, and also based on what model of interpretation you're using, will kind of determine how you perceive this. Okay. All right. So he says, an undocumented immigrants. At the same time, Cardinal Bernardin emphasized the distinction between each of the problems. Any effort to conflate them without understanding their relative moral importance would depart from Catholic teaching. In other words, the Cardinal was not claiming that all of life's problems were equal. And so here he's steel manning the seamless garment view. So the common critique of the seamless garment is, well, you're just emphasizing all of these other issues as if they're just directly equal to the sin of abortion. But the Steelman view is to say, well, no, not necessarily. There are distinctions and differences in the sin itself, but we need to be equally vocal about these other sins as we are the sin of abortion. So he's now Steelmanning the seamless garment view. Rather, he placed great emphasis on the distinctive character of each challenge or dilemma, each of which requires its own criteria for analysis, while at the same time emphasizing the reality of the interrelationship of all threats to the dignity of human life. One of the great challenges we face today, particularly at this Catholic university and at a Catholic universities, is to find the best way to teach and promote precisely a way of thinking that seeks to unite efforts in the church, in politics, and in all sectors of society to work in harmony, to build a society where the value of every human life is respected and where protected. At the Catholic University, we have an enormous responsibility to deepen this reflection and in the spirit of synodality to accompany this great task of illuminating and proposing valid solutions to the many challenges we must address. Once again, I thank and congratulate everyone for their work at university, especially on this occasion, this celebration of the 25th anniversary of the founding of the university. And so there it is. And so what I just did with you is what most won't do, and that is show you the entire thing, show you the context. What some people will do is ignore that this ever happened. Others will maybe show you just one snippet and then offer commentary on that and ignore everything else that was just said. I just showed to you the whole thing so that you can fact check me in real time and see the whole thing, and you can see whether I'm being fair with the source or not. What some people will do, as we've already seen a few in the chat, here's how some will react if they're even aware of this. Again, I predict the vast majority of those who were critical of Pope Francis will not show this to their audience. So they probably just won't talk about it. They'll either not be aware, or if they're aware, they just sweep it under the rug. Okay. I predict that will likely be the case. However, For the few who will comment on it, they likely won't show you the whole thing. They'll likely show you only a snippet. And then for the very few after that who would show you the whole thing, what they'll attempt to argue is, well, this was 2 years ago. He wasn't Pope Leo the 14th, so you can't say this is Pope Leo the 14th. This was Cardinal Prevost. And they'll use that kind of schizophrenic paradigm and say that Cardinal Prevost is not the same as Leo the 14th. He profoundly changed due to the graces of the papacy, and they'll try to argue that, even though everything that we've seen from Pope Leo the 14th so far is consistent with everything that he said before. Nothing has substantially changed. I'm not, as you can see, I'm not buying the split personality or the two Leos, the Prevost versus Leo. I'm not buying that thesis, and I think time will bear me out on that point. I think the evidence already bears it out, but right, if even if it's too early to tell for some people, give it a year or two, and you'll see what I'm saying here is true, that Pope Leo the 14th has not changed from Cardinal Prevost. They're the same person, same views, and so I think that what you're going to get in this pontificate is an implementation of these views. Okay, so some people are going to love that. Some people are going to absolutely love that. They're going to be on fire. Other people are going to absolutely hate this. Their hair will be on fire. Some people will kind of be in the middle, right? But, regardless of what perspective you're coming from, this will at the very least give you a balanced view of what's going on. And it also shows you that what I've been telling y'all all along, that the Pope, whoever is elected, will be consistent with Pope Francis, whether you like that or not. Different question. He will be Pope Francis, another Pope Francis. Obviously, there will be differences in personality and some differences here and there, but on the whole, he will carry out the legacy and thought and vision of Pope Francis. Everything that we've seen so far from Leo the 14th, before Pope and after Pope, bears that out.